wondering, why am I here? My communication's okay. I mean, sure, a few bumps in the road, maybe, but basically, my communication's okay. So why am I coming to Toastmasters and wasting my time here? And I get it. I really do. Because I used to think the same thing. I thought, my communication's okay. Oh, sure, maybe a few bumps in the road, but basically, my communication's okay. Until one day, I found out my communication wasn't okay. It almost cost me my job. Now, this was way back when I first started my job as a professional secretary. I had a guy at my desk, Ted. Now, Ted was a tall guy with brown hair, kind of a big guy, very highly placed in the company. He really was a big shot, and he always flew to New York City. Every week, he'd go to New York City, and he'd always book his travel at the last moment. He'd book his airplane at the last moment, and he'd book his hotels the last moment. Have you ever been to New York? Been there? Back me up on this. It's big, right? It is big. If you haven't been to New York City, it is wall-to-wall people. If you don't book hotels for days, months, weeks in advance, you're not getting in. So he'd book at the last moment. So I'd call up our travel department. And I'd say, Todd wants to stay in La Sierra Hotel. I'd say, sir, La Sierra Hotel is booked up for weeks. I'd say, okay, travel, what else you got? And Todd wouldn't get his hotel that week. Or the next week. Or the week after that, or any week, because the hotels were always booked up. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Tim, this is a problem. You got to deal with this. And I knew that. I had it all figured out in my head. Exactly what I was going to say, exactly how I was going to handle Todd. I'd say something like, Todd, you really ought to book your hotels further in advance. Or maybe I'd say, Todd, you ought to stay in less popular hotels. No matter what I said, it always turned out the same way. Todd said, Tim, you're a genius. I'm glad you're working with a team. And everything was great. Until one day, Todd came over to my desk and said, Tim, come into my office. I thought, well, must be about the hotels. So I went into Todd's office, sat down in the big chair. Todd went around his big desk, sat down in the big chair, and said, Tim, why aren't you booking my hotel? And a lot of different ideas went through my head. My first thought was, we should say that you should book your hotels further in advance. No, you can't tell him when to book his hotels. You should just say, maybe you should say that you tell him that he should stay in less popular hotels. Can't do that. I can't tell him what hotels to stay in. And then the idea flashed into my head. Maybe I should just say, Todd, don't ever go to New York City. But that's not an answer. So I thought about it, and finally I said, Todd, I'll book your hotels when they're available. And there was a long silence. And then at last, Todd said, Tim, you have a serious communication problem. There's a Toastmasters club starting up. It's supposed to make you a better communicator. I strongly suggest you go to that club. And Tim, we will be talking about this later. So I went to the Toastmasters club. At the door, there was a guy, Bob, tall guy, blonde hair. He said, Tim, you're going to get more out of Toastmasters if you start taking on speeches and doing roles. So I started that. Started taking on speeches and doing roles. And I got better. I started to understand really what speaking was all about and what I should have been doing. So when I went back to Todd, I was able to say, Todd, here's the thing about New York. It's very, very busy. And I can't book your hotels right now because they aren't available. But what I will do is I will book your hotels in the future. and just book as many hotels as I can, like 2 months out. For the short term, I'm going to have to put you in less popular hotels. So what happened is, several months later, finally, Todd started getting his hotels. And I learned something from that moment. I learned, by the time you know you've got a business communication problem, it's usually too late. By the time you realize you've got a business communication problem, it's usually too late. I was lucky to keep my job. Many people aren't that. And you don't want that to happen to you. That's why you're here. You want to build and develop your communication skills. So you go out on the stage, you're large and in charge. You take charge. You pull people in, get them interested from the beginning. You very quickly can start setting up speeches, and you know how to set up speeches that engage, interest, and pull people in. And you've got a step-by-step process to work through. Working through that process will make you a better speaker. When that happens, your life gets better. Because you're so much more comfortable. All that pressure is off you. All of a sudden, you're relaxed, you're comfortable, and you're in control. You never know when a business communication situation will happen that can make or break your career. So come to Toastmasters. Take on speeches. Take on roles. So when that next big business speech communication opportunity comes along, you're ready.